Hey everybody, my name is Rob Woodbridge from Untethered.tv. What you're about to see here is a short clip of a much longer episode. It can be found on Untethered.tv. So if you really are interested in this, go to Untethered.tv, do a search for this title, and you'll find it there. But enjoy this short clip.
There were many other companies that were focused on this group communication. Remember, iMessage hadn't launched yet, but it was a lot of rumors about Apple wanting to do something to cut out the text messaging fees. You had GroupMe, which was the private SMS group chat, and had just been acquired by Microsoft towards the end of our tenure, which then was part of Skype, or acquired by Skype, became part of Microsoft. We had Beluga, which was an iOS-based IP as well as SMS group chat, acquired by Facebook. And you could read the tea leaves as to where that would go, and it did go where people expected. It turned into Facebook Messenger and Facebook's desire to deepen their communication tools. And then iMessage was announced and released, and basically making it interoperable between iOS devices as well as eventually the Mac. And so when we saw that the landscape for communication tools were changing, it became more clear that it would be very difficult to be an independent communication company, because all this consolidation happened within 3 or 4 months. And so our plan to eventually build a durable long-term communication network was going to be a very, very long-term effort, as well as a game of being on every single device. And we love iPhones. Android at that point wasn't as great. It certainly improved tremendously. But we were a small team, and we didn't really have the interest to either make a white label solution for another Android partner. Samsung has their own private, iMessage style competitor. And so there were opportunities to do something like that with other vendors, other carriers. The opportunity to do private white label for events, conferences, ball games, things like that, where they wanted our chat infrastructure, or to go into business side of things and do a business chat for phones and desktop and things. But that wasn't what we set out to do. We set out to see if it was possible to build a new communication network from scratch and do it on mobile first. And, we knew that we would feel it if it was working really, really well, and we weren't being pulled into it. We were trying to push to figure out how to make it work. And when we did a lot of thinking about it, we realized that rather than spend another $750,000 from our investors who had given us the money, but we didn't know how we were going to win it, and the other paths to win were not paths we wanted to take philosophically. We realized that we either needed to take a boatload more money and prepare for a 4 or 5 year slog to try and build this network, but still it's going to be a binary outcome. It's either going to work or it won't. We wouldn't be able to make money until it was really huge. And this was our first company also, our first startup, and we wanted to do well by everyone involved. We knew that our careers would be long and that we would be able to work on many projects, and we loved building great product. And so we wanted to make sure that our employees were well taken care of, that the investors would work with us again and would be happy, and that we'd have the opportunity to go build new things. And rather than puff up our chests and believe we're going to go solve this, we know how to solve it. At that point, in the last few months, we were trying to figure things out, but it wasn't firing on all cylinders in terms of adoption. And there's lots of talk about this around product market fit and things like that, but that's a lot of sort of theoretical stuff. But the reality was we were growing, but we weren't growing as fast as we really needed to be a breakout success. And that's what the plan was from the beginning. And once we realized that we didn't feel comfortable sort of renegotiating that plan with our employees and all these things, we decided to see if there were other opportunities available to us. And so that's when we, called back some people who, for the past year, had been calling us saying, "Hey, why don't you guys build some really cool stuff? You got a great team. Why don't you come talk to us?" And so, if you build anything that people use and is demonstrably interesting on some vertical, some people build very efficient things, some people build deep technology, some people build really great product and design things. That's certainly the camp we focused on. And so companies that care about that had always been talking to us. And it's always a strange conversation because you get this email from some executive at a company you've heard of and you probably use a lot of their products. And it's very flattering. But you realize what they want is for you to come and join them, and assuming there's a good fit. So that sort of means that it's going to be what you've been working on. You need to transfer your vision into their vision. And that's tough when you still are pushing hard forward. And so we would demur on those calls and say, "Thank you very much, but it's not the right time." And towards the end, we said, well, let's chat and let's see what's interesting. And so that exercise led us into eventually making the move to Mixbook.
All right, let's stop there for a second, because I'm so, it's so intriguing to watch this, right? Because there's a hubris to being an entrepreneur, isn't there? There's this kind of, like, as you said, you can puff up your chest and you can say, we're going to revolutionize this communications, right? But you guys kind of took a look around and you saw your competitors kind of being scooped up by some big freaking players, right? Like Skype into Microsoft. How many millions? 200, 300 million people using that every day. And then you saw Facebook getting into this game with their acquisition of Beluga. And then, there was all these rumors, and BBOS at that time, BlackBerry Messenger, BBM, was pretty dominant at that point as well, if you can believe it. And then iMessage coming in. So you looked at all these things kind of descending on this thing. And then you always had that ubiquitous, nervous system of the internet called Twitter, really bearing down in that kind of communications or one-on-one communications as well. And this must have been one of these things where you looked around and you said, like, you know what? We could probably compete, as you thought. Like, we could do this. It's going to take us 5 or 6 years. It's binary. It's a 1 or a 0. We're going to succeed or fail. There's no in between. I don't know if you had figured out the revenue model at that point when you were trying to figure it out, and maybe it was a little bit murky, but you knew that the number of users would indicate how much money you could make off of this. And then you look at it, at the time, probably 500 million people on Facebook. You looked at 200 and 300 million people on Skype. And then you think, what's it going to take us to get to 800 million or 100 million people to be able to make this of value? Is that what's going through your mind to make these decisions?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the air was being sucked out of the market a bit. Generally, it's not that important to worry about big competitors, but in certain instances it is. In instances where there are true network effects, and communication systems are the sort of poster child for network effects. They're modeled after the telephone, right? The telephone and the fax machine are the quintessential example of what network effects are about. And so the more people in the network, it's, the square of the number of people in there is the value. And so the challenge being a small network and a communication system is just very realistically, if I want to meet new people and I'm going to be this place, we need a lot of people for you to meet. And if you want to be the place where you actually are one-to-one communication, everyone you want to talk to needs to be using it. And when we started it, there were lots of people trying all of these apps and trying to figure out which one made most sense for them and was most interesting. But once they're consolidated, you then move just to being a Facebook user again, or you keep using GroupMe, but it's part of Skype, and so they can compete asymmetrically. They know they have all these users already, and so they just need to convert those into using this product. Where we were converting people into using this new concept, as well as getting them to sign up and join us, as well as being fighting this battle of being a communication network, where there isn't much individual value. If no one else was using Yobongo except for you, it's not useful. If no one else is using Instagram, it is still a great way to record your memories. It's still a great way to make your photos look better. And you can still hold up your phone and show your friend, hey, look at this cool photo I made. Yobongo didn't have that. And I think that was a very important learning for us, was if it doesn't have individual value, it has to take off like a rocket ship, and it has to be a sustainable process.